Hello and welcome to the STCfit podcast. I'll be your host today. My name's Nat Jurek, and with me I'll be joined by Ben Scott and Jason Galea. STCfit are a group of coaches who provide premium coaching and education services to high-achieving women who want to ditch the frustration and achieve the results they want when they want. On the podcast, we'll be discussing all things related to our 5-step method to experiencing total clarity in knowing how to achieve your goals, present and future. The podcast is brought to you by STCfit for all your online and personal training needs. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a share and tag at Nat Jurek STCfit, at Ben Scott STC, and at Jason Galea _STC. Hope you enjoy the show.
People don't expect you to struggle or be, I don't know. I feel like when we first started coaching, I thought you were like the epitome of adherence.
That's actually a good topic because everyone does. Like, people will probably look at you and think the same thing.
Yeah.
And actually, that was probably true for you for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because you were still dealing with your own, your own shit where you're like, hey, I need to be perfect. I cannot deviate from my targets, the slightest bit. Whereas now, even the last conversation that we had where you're like, hey, I'm just going to eat intuitively. It was nothing. It was a totally different person. And I'm like, hang on a minute. When did this change? So that's probably what your clients think of you, you know?
It's crazy because on a Saturday I went out and I had a few drinks and definitely exceeded the calories. And I was just like, wow, I woke up the next day and I was like, oh, it's a bit crappy, but whatever. And I'm just like, well, when we first started coaching together, you would have been getting messages in the essay form, being what the heck?
Do you know what's funny? Because I don't ever really unless I'm doing it for a reason, reflect on, client to client, start to now.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were driving here, I was like, fuck, we've actually been working together for how long? 19, 20, 21, nearly 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Which is huge. And I'm like, oh my God, you have legitimately come, been through the fucking ringer, when we think about it. And I was looking at your Instagram, the TikTok that you made.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, fuck, you literally have got 3 versions of yourself, 3 different stages that are not just minor little hurdles. They're full blown, life altering circumstances. And I'm like, fuck, that's huge.
It's so funny because I look at that and when I was obese, I'm going to use the word obese because overweight doesn't do it justice.
Yeah, you use that on the question thing. And I was like, it's actually true. Genuinely.
And I got a reply to that being obese is such a strong term. Be careful how you use it. And I literally replied to them. I was like, I was 106 to 110 kilos. I wasn't overweight. I was fat. Fat's not a bad word. It's descriptive.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. But I'm I spent 2 years trying to be so skinny. And then I spent a year and a half trying to maintain that. And now I'm like, well, you know what? If I weigh 5 kilos heavier and I go out once a month and I eat the food, who cares? So it's crazy.
Tam, are we on? We are. I'm like, we need to start rolling because this is all really valuable stuff. So you guys have just literally jumped in on Mel and I mid-conversation, not knowing that we're rolling and this is the shit that we talk about. So welcome to this week's episode of the STCfit podcast. I'm assuming most of you guys are here because you already know who Mel is because we've been putting it all over our stories that we're going to podcast together. Mel has been a long-term client of mine. End of 2019, was it?
Yeah, I think
19 to 20, 20 to 21, going to mid-22. So, 2.5 years we've been working together now.
Mm-hmm.
You're a nutrition coach as well. So you've just began your own coaching business, which is obviously a credit to the work that you've done in and of yourself as well. I think, in order to be a good coach, you have to have done the work yourself and experienced it and come out the other side. And I think in the last probably 6 months, you've really done that and done a 180 and gotten to a point where, like I just said to you, I'm not sure whether or not we got it, but you telling me that you're going to intuitively eat 6 months ago in comparison to you telling me yesterday is like two different Mels. So I really wanted to get you on here to unpack your story. Like, I think that you have got the most incredible story. You've been through the ringer, like we just said. You've been on all ends of the spectrum. So you can obviously speak to a lot of the stuff that people experience, whether it be to that degree and extent or not. You've kind of been there, done that. And I think that having been in that circumstance, you're a great person to kind of unpack what goes on in those places. So first of all, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So excited to have you here. Give the listeners a rundown on, let me kind of go back. I want to approach this from like I said, the three different phases that you've been in to begin with, because I think that from all three perspectives, you've done a lot of work. You see things from a different perspective. You've experienced different things. And I think it's a lot to kind of bunch that all into one, because it truly does deserve its own little, time frame and section to speak on. So let's rewind all the way back to like prior you and I working together, because I probably don't even know all too much about that version of you, because, we had a consult, gave me the rundown on where you were at. Looking back on that, you were also probably super reserved in what you told me, because there's a lot of vulnerability in explaining that to someone.
I was in my work office when we had that call.
I know.
And you were like, oh, I'm going to call you. And I was like, please don't.
I don't want to talk on the phone. Now I'm like, we're jumping on Zoom.
Yeah.
No, now you're like fresh out the shower and you're like, I'm going to FaceTime you. I mean, like, you obviously gave me the parts that you were comfortable with sharing. But the more we've gotten to know each other and the more our coaching experiences, progressed, like, I hear things that I didn't hear then. And I think that being in that place of rock bottom where you're actually seeking help, like, that comes with a lot. You're obviously in a really tough spot, and in order to kind of like open up to someone about that, it's probably something that you only speak about after the fact, because at the time you're just like in protection mode. You're like, I don't want anyone to see how much I'm struggling. So let's go back to, Mel, prior to that. Where were you at? Like, how did you kind of get to that spot where you initially thought, I'm done, I need some help?
So obviously prior to us working together, I had lost about 50 kilos. So I suppose a majority of my weight had been lost. So when Nat and I first started working together, I was in a place where I was with another very popular company doing their kind of meal plan coaching.
I full-blown forgot about that. Like, it hasn't even crossed my mind.
I'm trying to forget about it too. And I was just kind of at a place. So when I was overweight, so when I was fat, I'm just going to say, I didn't really consider anything about health. I didn't have any negative body image kind of days. I just was living. Like, that's all it was. I didn't consider myself as overweight, fat, whatever.
Would you say that you were on autopilot? Like, that you were kind of just not even, like, you didn't even have that awareness?
Yeah, like I just didn't even, like, even when I was buying clothes, because I was like a size 20, sometimes 22, I didn't really register that, hey, this is actually not like a good size for you to be. So it wasn't until I lost all of that weight and then I, was going to the gym, and then you kind of felt like that pressure to maintain it. And I suppose that's when I started going a bit south, and I kept going. And I was at a point before Nat and I got together where I was struggling with binge-eating disorder. I'd been diagnosed with binge-eating disorder, got diagnosed with binge-eating and anorexia, and those diagnoses weren't enough for me to initiate change, because I was still terrified of gaining all the weight back, felt the pressures. At this point, lost my period. I was turning blue during the day because I was no body fat.
I remember you saying that to me, like, probably a couple of months into us working together. You're like, nah, my hand's purple.
Yeah. And it was just like I was going downhill real bad. My poor body was about to give away for sure.
Hang on a minute. So I think that you just like full on speed road past that like diagnosis and that whole process. So how did that kind of unfold? Like, obviously we always speak about the fact that binge eating is just like so widely used. And you see it all the time. I see it all the time where people misinterpret how it works. So just for the listeners' sake, talk them through what that process looked like. I think a couple of episodes back we had Sophie on, who is a dietitian, and she kind of spoke about that from a more clinical sense. But I also think it's important to talk to it from your experience, your personal experience, as someone who's gone through it, come out the other end. What did that process actually look like? What were the red flags for you? Who did you speak to? How did you get to that point where you were like, okay, I have this diagnosis and these are the things that's happening right now?
Yeah. So for me, binge eating was very much, to the definition of it, is multiple binges in a short frame. So for example, in a week or 2 week period, probably have about 3. That was when I was at like my peak. And that, when I talk about binge eating, it's not just eating two pizzas and a block of chocolate to yourself. It was more like 2 pizzas, the leftover takeaway in the cupboard, the chips, the tuna, the rice. Oh, I'm going to spit this out and put it in the bin, and then dig it in the bin 45 minutes later to finish it, to a point where I'd be in the room with my partner and I'd be sneaking out and saying I need to go to the toilet to actually consume like a whole bag of chocolate. And then it would get to the point where I was so full. I was I want to say violently full, to the point where my stomach hurt. I would never get to the point of purging, but I would get to the point where like I'm in agony. And then to the point where I would wake up the next day and it would hurt to put my arms down because of all the fluid. And it would hurt to wear a bra because the fluid was so, like, I looked like I'd put on, like, I looked like I was pregnant, to be honest, but like not a baby bump, like just a barrel. Like I was like straight, and just because all the fluid. So wearing clothes hurt the next day. Obviously I felt pretty crappy. So yeah, that would probably happen at social occasions as well. If there was like a grazing board, which Nat, you know, I still often like I struggle with, kind of like slowing down with that. So yeah, it was maybe like 6 months, and I'd put on like maybe like 10 kilos, I would say.
Is that back from your lowest, when you were kind of in that place where you're like, I need to maintain being this small?
Yeah. And I think as well, obviously being coached by the wrong people didn't help.
Yeah. What was your, I was just about to ask, like, what was your strategy with nutrition at that time? Because obviously you've kind of done a few different things. When you were in that place of like binge eating and at your worst, what were you doing? Well, what was the actual plan? What were you like, I should be doing this, however, it's going this way?
Yeah, so that was the point. I was eating about 900 calories per day when I was at my worst with binge eating. So obviously, as you can imagine, that's not sustainable, and not really a lot of nice foods you can eat at 900 calories. My day was probably like white fish and about 500 grams of spinach.
So that's why you don't like tuna.
Yeah, and like my main meal that I looked forward to the in the morning was oats. And that was my biggest calorie dense meal I had for the day. But yeah, so I was like, well, this is clearly not working. I know I shouldn't be eating this, but I'm too scared. So that's when I obviously went towards a meal plan service. But then obviously, because I'm not eating 900 calories anymore, and on the days that I am eating properly, I'm eating at maintenance. So then I'm technically, when I'm binging, I'm in a surplus. So
right, yeah.
Then
so
I
you were still binging
the weight. So
yeah, so you'd come back up to a prescribed regular amount of food, and the binges were still happening.
Yeah, exactly. And I purely think it's because I had no knowledge of how. Like I was. I can't remember the term that people use. It's not considered a actual illness, but when you only eat healthy foods. So like I was scared I was still
Clean
very
eating.
restricted. Yeah. In the sense I'd only eat organic. I'd only eat dark chocolate. I would only eat chickpea pasta because I thought, no way can I eat normal pasta.
Yeah.
So yeah, even when I was come back and I've gained a bit of weight and I'm kind of sitting fairly neutral, I was still having those binge episodes because I was eating so restrictive, and there was no flexibility. I still wasn't socializing. And if I went out and got on the beers one night with some friends, the next day, you best believe I was eating nothing because what have I just done? Like, you know what I mean? So
yeah, 100%. there's so much to that as well, because there's obviously like the food choice stuff, then there's the restriction stuff, then there's you've been eating such a low amount of calories for a long time, and it's like all of these things on their own are going to kind of like contribute to someone wanting to overeat, overindulge, maybe have a period of having a bad relationship with food. Put a few of those things together for one person, and it's like, fuck, like that is just a recipe for disaster. And, you can't necessarily, I guess, blame you for being in that position, because it's just like one thing on top of another, and ultimately they're going to lead to this end outcome.
Yeah, and I think as well, specifically, we talk about exercise. Obviously, I didn't have a coach then, so I was going into the gym. I obviously had an Apple Watch, wouldn't leave unless I burnt 500 calories at a minimum. I would I'd wake up, do a HIIT class, like my little notes app. A strength class or strength session on my little notes app. I'd write down all my little weights, and then I would do a HIIT class, and then I'd go for a 5-kilometer walk afterwards, and then I'd go for a 5-kilometer run on my lunch break. And when I got home, I'd do 5-kilometer walk. So I was walking 15 Ks per day and doing 2 sessions per day. And when Nat and I started together, I still had the mentality I had to burn 500 calories per session. So I'd be on the Stairmaster after doing mine and Nat's training program to get to the cows. And I wouldn't do my chest day because I was 121 calories on the Apple Watch. Yeah. Absolutely not.
It's so funny. I so vividly remember having those conversations. I actually feel lifetime ago of being hey, just wondering why my upper body days haven't burnt as many calories. And it's you would not be caught dead having that conversation now. Just so far past that.
I don't even have the watch on today.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say that. The other thing I wanted to touch on was how did you actually feel physically during that time? Because something that you've probably, seen yourself, and I've had lots of conversations with women who are in that place, maybe not to that extreme, but they are over-exercising, they are under-eating, and you're okay, how do you feel? And they're yeah, fine. You only kind of realize how shit you feel once you're out of that place. Because you're just immune to it at some point. Your body just adapts, you adjust, and you're this is now my new baseline, and you don't actually realize how shit you feel. So how was your sleep? How was your energy? How was your mood? How were your relationships? How did you interact with people? What was your work output like? Because these things start to obviously influence just life from a day-to-day basis standpoint.
Yeah. So obviously, like you said, when you're there, you don't really realize, but compared to now, and obviously, in terms of relationships, so Lindsay and I never used to go out to eat. It would always be Uber Eats at home. And if he got Uber Eats, I would be, eating a homemade meal. So in terms of relationships that way, it was really, really difficult and really hard to socialize. Even my friends, I was known as the bailer. I'd always say yes. And then on the day after I'd really convinced myself that this was the wrong thing to do, I would cancel. And
and I'm laughing because now you're I'm not 5 minutes to go. I'm fucking going. I don't care.
And I would make up the worst excuses. My mum's ill, because I was you know what I mean? I needed some reason. And because I'd bailed so many times and I knew I was just pulling things out of my bum to get me out of it. And if I had a big weekend, I'd call in sick to work on the next day to go to the gym, and I was miserable really. But yeah, my friendships were definitely suffered. My relationship with my family, I wouldn't go to birthdays, wouldn't go to Easter, wouldn't go to barbecues, wouldn't do anything. So I was really distant from them for about 2 years. And even now when I rock up to a social event, they're I'm so glad you're here, because they're so used to me not being there. So there was a good 2 years of my life where I just existed, but not with my friends and family, to myself, really.
Yeah, so. What an isolating place to be in. Yeah, that's huge. So you'd gotten that diagnosis. What happened after that?
Yeah, so I just want to be clear on the diagnosis as well, obviously, because as we mentioned, in binge eating, even coaching women myself, there is always a constant. I'm a binge eater when it's just overindulging. Yeah. So to get diagnosed, I had to go to my GP, and obviously we spoke about it. Then they referred me to a dietitian, nutritionist, all of that. And then that's kind of where you get the diagnosis from. And then you get referred to like a psychologist who specializes in eating disorders. And then obviously all three communicate together to be like, yes, this is actually what's happening here. So yeah, once I got that diagnosis, I was kind of like, so you mean I'm skinny? Like that's kind of like
badge of honor. Yeah.
I was like, I'm anorexic. Like I'm skinny. Like, and that's so like, that is just shows how bad the mindset is. Like I didn't care. I didn't have a period. I was like, that's health right there.
Yeah.
So after I got that diagnosis, I probably didn't really follow up on it for a while until like my binge eating got to the point it was weekly. And then I went to a doctor and then they kind of referred me to a psychologist that I started to see. And then to be honest, it didn't really resonate, Nat, as you would know, like it didn't, like I wouldn't, if it resonated, I probably wouldn't have signed up with you, if you know what I mean. So it kind of continued for like 6 months and it was pretty terrible. And then I decided to axe the meal plan company I was with because that clearly was making things worse. And then I was very hesitant when me and Nat were connected on Instagram, I suppose, to sign up. Nat knew like the position I was in with I just had like the experience with the other meal plan company and how that didn't help. And I think from there, me and Nat had several rocky months, I would say, in terms of things were, going well in one aspect, then it'd be like 5 steps back and I just binge ate. And we kind of came to a conclusion at one point, alcohol had a lot to do with it. And then I suppose, I was training, still suffering with like my binge eating, but I was doing better. And that was obviously very supportive and very helpful within her scope, like what she could offer. And then it got to a point where Nat introduced me to maintenance and I was like, absolutely, why would I do that? Definitely not. And Nat at this point kind of was like, well, you've lost 5 kilos with me. Like, we're going to maintenance. Like, it's not an option. We're going to try it. And then once I was in maintenance, like I was pretty comfortable there. And that was like, hey, like, what about performance-driven goals? And that's kind of, I suppose, when we started talking about things. I think that's really when everything turned around for me. Not eating to be skinny, but eating to, lift.
Yeah.
And that's, I kind of think when I actually meals plan service aside, psychologist, GP, all the dietitians that I had helping me aside, that's really when I started being like, oh my gosh, like it clicked. Like I don't have to live like this anymore.
Yeah.
And then I suppose since then, like the binges got less, got more interested in training, less interested in food. Still a hungry gal, but
still a bottomless pit, but some things never change.
I could probably out eat Ben and Jake's, I reckon.
Oh fuck. You don't want to test that theory.
But like since then it's been on the up and I feel like we're at a place now where like food definitely is still a trigger for me. Like but like Nat's obviously given me the tools where she's helped me, if I'm in that situation or what I need to do, and I just put it into practice and we're all good. So
yeah, I wanted to come back to the training stuff because like as you were talking through all of this and our initial few months together, from an outsider's perspective, like 1,000,000%, like I can see that that's where things landed. That's where things started to shift, where you were like, okay, like I'm scared to eat at maintenance, but I'm going to do it anyway because, I don't want to live this way anymore.
Did I have a choice?
Well, I mean, at that point, you're kind of like, I'm willing to try anything, Like,
yeah, that's very true. I was very like, why would I do that? But I was like, I guess, like it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think like when you're at your wit's end, you're like, I've tried all the dumb shit. Like, I may as well just try something else. It doesn't work. What's the worst thing that can happen? And then obviously I was like, okay, cool. If we're going to be at maintenance, then let's shift the goals. Like, we still always want to have something to work towards. And I actually think that this could be a productive thing for you to do. Yeah. So talk me through the changes in terms of training. Obviously you mentioned that you were like in a place where it was calories burned. It was just doing as many sessions as you can, like clocking up how many times you went to the gym. There was no real structure. Yeah. What was the thing that changed that for you in terms of going into the gym, focusing on progress, being really invested in getting as strong as you can? How did that start to shift things?
I suppose because I started to see, so gym for me, obviously I briefly spoke about what I was doing prior to you, like the outrage of like how much I was exercising. I suppose first and foremost, the shift stop like it was stopping a chore. So it's something fun. So let me just put it bluntly, I hate the training when you're in a deficit. I hate it. The type of exercises, the rep range, it's just crappy. I don't like it.
Yeah.
We just
not a
bar that
hypertrophy
off.
gal.
Yeah. So when we got into a maintenance, it was a different type of training, and I was introduced to the barbell again, the pull barbell. God, abused by me.
Yeah, this is like the fucking worst like love affair ever. You're like, I hate it, but you keep coming back to it. It's like a toxic relationship.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I started lifting Sydney Harbour Bridge back and all, and like it was terrible, but it was fun. And it was like, wow, this has purpose. Like, and then I suppose obviously I had my notes app previously, but Nat and the old Excel sheet could see my like your volume going up every week, and it becomes a little bit of competitiveness with yourself. Like, oh, I got to beat last week's and got to improve. And I suppose as well having the accountability of Nat there, being like, send me your videos. Let's make sure you're lifting properly. And I don't know, it just became enjoyable. It became a hobby. And then that kind of introduced me to maybe putting the Apple Watch away for a little while and stop weighing yourself and, just see how you feel. And, I was like, well, what she said so far has worked. So why wouldn't I do this? So hoorooed weighing ourselves for a little bit.
Yeah.
Got rid of the Apple Watch. And then, then also you introduced me to like foods to eat, pre, post, intra workout. And I started doing that for a little while, and I noticed my workouts were better. That's actually dropped off. I should probably start doing that again. But yeah, so it realistically, in short, that was a very long explanation, but it just became enjoyable and not a chore. And then within that, learning how to eat around training and seeing the results because I was lifting more because of the food, took the shift off how I looked and more so how I felt. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I see you say it as well on your socials, and obviously like you speak to your clients about it, the idea of having performance-focused goals and like knowing that that's a thing. I mean, if you had asked yourself 2 years ago, was there a goal for you outside of weight loss, you would have like thought that was insanity, right? Like you wouldn't have even considered that intentionally trying to get bigger. Like obviously you've been in surplus for quite some time as well. They're trying to put on size or trying to just lift more and get stronger were actually like feasible, tangible goals that you could genuinely want. Like that getting smaller and fat loss wasn't just the only thing that you could do.
Literally. And now I think I am 10 kilos up from my smallest ever weight, and I look better than I ever have. Like I look back at those photos and I was like, geez, you look unwell. Like, what were you doing? Get a grip. And now I look in the mirror, I'm like, ass fat.
Confidence is way too fucking high.
Like, I suppose fake it till you make it, to the point like I was overconfident for so long, didn't believe it. And now when I say that stuff in my stories, it might come across as arrogant, but I'm like, I look good. Like, so... Yeah. And I definitely think that's a byproduct of my training and like having performance-driven goals. Like it's the best I've ever looked. I have definition in my legs. Don't have abs, but I've got the definition there. Like I've got little chicken wing biceps. Like it's good. Like
yeah. And had you ever told yourself, a few years back that would be the thing to get you there, like you just wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, I would have been like, no, nah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And I think it was also important to acknowledge within this, like it hasn't been easy. Like obviously us working together and getting there, like there's times where I've definitely not been honest with Nat, and I was definitely not eating as much food as I should purely because I was scared, and Nat's pulled me up and been like, what's going on with your training? Like what's happening here? And then like, it hasn't been easy, but you got to invest, I think, in a good coach, and they notice that stuff and pull you back in line. So
yeah, I mean, you spoke about at the beginning like how isolated you felt. Obviously, like now you're in a position where you've got lots of people in your circle who understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
This is something we spoke about in the Be Bulletproof workshops where, I mean, you weren't alone in saying that you were in a position where it's like the circle that you have in the community that you have outside of like your personal network is
Mm-hmm.
like so valuable, because
Mm-hmm.
when people don't get it, they don't get it. And you still feel like you can be doing all the things and feeling really good, but if your close friends and family don't understand what you're doing, you're
Mm-hmm.
still going to feel alienated. Is that something that like, you know, you've kind of had to work through, and you've had to kind of reach out and find your people who get it?
Yeah. So when I was going through it, I definitely, I suppose people didn't understand. And I wasn't very honest with where I was at as well. And if you asked me if I was doing bad, I would have said I was doing great. But I suppose since Be Bulletproof, I think was our first session. And I'm not going to lie, that was probably one of the most important parts to go away from the whole couple of weeks, is that like, who do you surround yourself with, and like, how do they bring out the best in you? Do they understand you? Like, do you understand them? Do your values align? And I suppose since then I've started to like apply that more so to my life. And to be honest, I have ended some friendships since then that weren't actually understanding to the way I wanted to live, because, you know, being adherent and compliant to my calories and training is important to me. Like I don't have adherence issues. I don't, you know what I mean? I'm
quite the opposite.
Like, so like I need someone who will understand that if I say no, it's no, and this is why. So since then, I've actually welcomed new friends into my life that are very supportive of that. And I've actually exited friends from my life or created distance that don't support that. So compared to then and now, like I feel pretty confident within the people I surround myself around, because they support and understand. They don't actually understanding. They don't have to understand. They just have to support you.
Yeah.
And that's what I get asked all the time actually by girls, is my friends, my partner, they don't understand. They don't support me. And at the end of the day, your friends do not have to understand. Like you can explain to them, but they don't. They don't have to get it, but they do have to support you. And if they don't support you, then hooroo, like off you go. Not friends that you want.
I mean, like it's so easier said than done. It's a really touchy topic. And when we brought it up in Be Bulletproof, I remember everyone was kind of like, oh, like I don't want to have this conversation, because like, you know, these are the people that I've known for however many years. These are the friendships that I've created that have been around me, and we've done certain things and it's always looked a certain way. It's very easy, and obviously now you've done it, it's very easy to say, okay, you know, see you later, like I'm done with that. However, I think there's a lot of shit that needs to happen before that. And obviously, like, you know, we've spoken about the mindset shifts and, you know, looking at things from a different perspective and who do you want to be and like all of that stuff. That, like, to be honest, and you've said it before, you've kind of been like, hey, I don't want to look at that shit. Like, that's not for me. That mindset work's not for me. Don't want to look at it. Don't want to address it. However, once you have, that's kind of been the thing that's enabled you to make these decisions and be in a position where you're like, actually, this is what I want. This is how I'm going to approach this. And it's also brought up, like I know you mentioned confidence before, but it has given you another level and another layer of confidence, because rather than trying to people please all the other people that you have around you, you're coming at it from a perspective of like, you know, what's good for me, everything else will kind of fall into place after that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand, like, in terms of confidence, it's not even just confidence in the way you look. Like, what's this given to me is confidence within myself in every aspect. So I'm confident in the decisions I make regarding nutrition, food, life. Like, it's brought overall well-being confidence, I suppose. Like, I know now who I am as a person. I'm happy with those decisions. I'm happy with the people I hang out with. Like, if I make a decision regarding friends, family, life, I'm confident with it. And that's when something that I was first starting with you, you're like, you will start to feel confident. And I looked at that as only physically, like, oh, I'll have a good body. It's not just that. And when Nat approached me about mindset stuff, me and Sam, literally.
I love how you like me and Sam.
Yeah, me and Sam, me and Food Diary, literally pulled the piss out of her, because obviously we have a relationship personally as well. And we would be like, make jokes about screaming affirmations in the mirror and stuff like that. And I look at it now, and mindset stuff is the most important progress that I've made in my, like, you know what I mean? So like when I started taking that seriously about that stuff, not the meditation stuff, you know, each to your own, but like other aspects of it, that's where I also made a lot of I thought I'd already made it. Like I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm great. And then we started to work on the way I thought about things, who I hung out with, what do I want to do in my life? And then that's where I also made further progress. So, and that's where I became more confident as well. So I think that's very interesting. And I think people don't expect, I think they expect confidence with the way they look. But then again, when you feel good, like when you feel like you look good, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I know firsthand, you took the absolute piss out of me for ages. Is that so funny? One of the questions that I got and that I get all the time is people being like, how do you actually coach Mel? Like, you guys are friends. Like, how does that actually work? It's like boundaries.
Yeah, it's so funny because Nat's check-ins, they're like, there's no, it's very professional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so, but then again, obviously, because we have a personal relationship, she knows if I'm not really, doing something I should be doing. So like, she'll be like, oh, I saw on Instagram and as we were talking about, like you did this, like, so it's bittersweet, but like, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really expect to have a coach and have a friend for life out of it, if that makes sense. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's like one of those things, like when I get asked, I'm like, the only thing that comes to mind is boundaries.
Yeah,
it's like we genuinely say to each other, obviously, like we speak every day and we have a group chat with Sam, and you'll speak about things because it's our life, right? So it's like, oh my God, guys, should I go out on the weekend? Like, just general shit that you speak to your friends about. And I will literally say to you, do you want my answer as a coach right now, or do you want my answer as a friend? Like, is this friend now or coach now speaking? Like, which one do you want? And then we'll just have the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, when we're in that group chat situation, it's not work. Like, you're not there to work. So it's as a, you know what I mean? It's as a friend. If I'm going to message you like about something serious, it'll be on, what is it called? Happy Wall, Team Wall. What's it called?
What did you call it the other day?
What's it called?
I actually can't. Mighty Networks. Yeah.
Mighty
Networks.
Yeah, it'll be on that. It was Messenger for a while. So like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think it's good. I also wanted to mention Be Bulletproof program. Just want to plug that because obviously I got offered that and to sit in that, very fortunately. And at first I was like, what a great offering, but I was like, a bit of mindset stuff, not for me. Like, but you know what? I'll do it. Open-minded. Went in a bit like, I don't know. Came out from it with a business. Like, you know what I mean? One of the subjects were, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, well, nutrition, I'm really passionate about it. I messaged Ben, I think, a couple of weeks after. I was like, oh, does STCfit offer anything like that? And he was like, no, unfortunately not at the moment. But I was like, all right, well, I'll do it on my own. And without that Be Bulletproof course, don't think I would have started my business. So I just want to, like, it's very, to anyone listening, it's very helpful for mindset kind of growth as well. It makes you think about a lot of things. And I think it was very uncomfortable, but it was good, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so,
it was huge. Like,
so
biggest
just saying, anyone's lost, anyone wants some information, that really is, honestly, I'm very fortunate. And I wish I appreciated it more going into it than I did afterwards. But yeah, very good course.
Bless. Thank you. I didn't promise you guys I didn't slip Mel like a sneaky bank transfer before this to say any of these things. Yeah, that's awesome. Like, that's huge. Like, obviously when we look at our training, our nutrition, what we're doing in the gym, all of these things, yes, we look at them in isolation, but we also zoom out and we look at them from the broader lens of how these things slot into our life and who we want to be, how we want to show up. And like, that is just a prime example of how that can actually shift when you're willing to kind of take that next step. Like you said, you were uncomfortable. Not just uncomfortable, like you were blatantly like, fuck that shit, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I was like, thanks for offering it to me. I'll do it. But I wasn't like, you know what I mean? I should have been more appreciative because one, what a fan, like it was amazing. But I was like, nah, I don't like this stuff. Like, and then I went into it being like, what the, like, uncomfortable, but good. Like, make me think about these things.
Yeah.
And now I've cut some friends out. I've got new friends, got a business, and I literally put it down to that course. So
that's amazing. Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, like, job done for us. Like, that's all we really want to do in terms of delivering this course. So So I will take the opportunity now to tell anyone who's listening, you can head to the link in the bio and apply for the Lifters Circle, where you will get access to be Bulletproof. And we've kind of changed things in terms of the way that we deliver it. Now it's kind of open to anyone inside of the Lifters Circle. So you'll have access to a community, like Mel mentioned. Like, that is one of the things that contributes to the way that we view these things and the way that we integrate it into the bigger perspective of our life. So 1,000%, if this sounds like it sparks your interest, you can head to the link in the bio and submit your application. We put our stories up with some questions. So I want to chuck it over to you. What did you get? Any questions? What did we kind of get from your end?
Yeah. So the first question what I want to ask is, because I think when me and Nat just spoke about this before, but when I first started with Nat, I thought she was the epitome of adherence, compliance, always stuck to her calories.
Jason's sitting there like, absolutely fucking not.
Yeah. So Nat, have you ever struggled with food, or like, do you struggle with food? What's your story there?
Look, I wouldn't actually say I struggled with food. Very much struggled with, like, my perception of self, right? It's like, to me, it's a value thing. If someone's like, I struggle with overeating, I struggle with undereating, struggle with my relationship with food, it's not food. It's kind of like the symptom. Yeah. What you're actually struggling with is your perception of yourself, or your value of yourself, or, you know, all of those things from more of an internal perspective. So whilst I didn't have those extremes that you did, 100%, like, that's kind of how I got into this. I was overweight at some point, like, you know, I'd probably say I'm very close to what I weigh now, but a wildly different body composition, like 99% body fat. So yeah, I've also been on the other end where I've been overweight. Like, same thing as you, it wasn't something that I really realized at the time. Like, I went away for a trip to Europe, came back, got told, like, literally stepped off the plane and got told, oh, you put on weight, like, look at you, you're all chubby. And I'd never been like the chubby girl, so it looked different on me. Like, you could really tell. So that was kind of like oh fuck, like, I'm the bigger girl now, like, I've never been that person. But it wasn't like, you know, as a not intentional, but it wasn't something that I was aware of. I was like, oh, I'm just living my best life, like, you know, I'm just eating. I just turned 18. I'm going out every weekend, multiple times per weekend, eating shit after that. Like, just all the things that you do when you kind of like make that switch into like early adulthood. Very, very similar story to you, just not as extreme. Had that reality check, was like, okay, cool, got to drop some weight, hired a personal trainer, did things the wrong way, ate low calories for a very long time, stuck to those low calories for a very long time, thought, how am I going to maintain this? The only way to do that was to eat very low calories for a long time. So, I mean, yeah, like, with that comes a shit relationship with food. With that comes not wanting to eat out. With that comes saying no to things. Very similar to the things that you've explained, just maybe not to that extreme. So potentially people that are listening to this who aren't on that end can probably relate to my story a little bit more. Where it's like, all of those things did happen. Why did they happen? Because I had to do things to make myself feel a certain way. I wanted to feel good. I wanted to feel confident. I wanted to feel happy. So the only way to do that was to kind of restrict my food or make myself look a certain way so I could show up as the person that I thought I wanted to be, which, I mean, we've just unpacked the fact that it doesn't work that way. You got to do some more shit to get there. Now, probably very much like you, it's just like, you overeat. It is what it is. Like, yeah, I overeat. I think I put a post up about it yesterday. It was like, you're a human. You will overeat. Every single person on this planet will overeat because, like, we're not robots, and we socialize, and different periods of our life are going to entail different habits and behaviors. And, like, there's no harm in that. Just know when you want to do it. Be conscious of that decision. So something that, like, we speak about, something that, you know, I have conversations with myself about is, like, how do I want to approach this thing? Yeah. So it's like, you know, do I want to overeat? Like, am I doing it purposely? Like, do I want to enjoy myself and socialize? And even just consciously making that decision takes away the guilt, because you're like, wake up the next day, scales up, I feel like shit, but it's like, hey, I chose that, you know? Like, I knew what I was doing. I made that decision, and I'm just going to bear the consequences of it. And, like, that's a shift that it's really important to make. You've obviously made that as well.
It's crazy though, like how like your life can be so run by those scales. Like, you're overeating, so why wouldn't your weight be up? And that's a conversation I have with my clients as well. I'm like, you ate a lot of food yesterday, it's so fine, but it's just it's normal.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the meaning that we attach to it, like.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's this kind of backstory that I put in my post yesterday. I was like, there's nothing wrong with overeating. There's nothing wrong with the scale going up. It's what the meaning that you attach to it, that kind of like causes all the problems and the dramas, and that internal battle with yourself. But I mean, of course, like, I overeat. I eat too much. I don't follow my diet for all too long. Like, I'm a human, like everyone does that. Anyone who kind of sits there and preaches that they're perfect all the time, like, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. I actually call bullshit.
Social media, I think, is very distorted for that as well. There's a lot of influencers on there who preach low calories Monday to Friday, and you don't see them out in the town, especially Gold Coast and stuff like that. So beware of those ones, guys.
Yeah, well, we were just speaking about that. Well, we're like, everyone will give you the best side of what they're doing, especially on social media, especially someone whose business is revolved around that topic. So everyone wants you to think that they're perfect and that they're doing what they need to 100% of the time. And it's like, I mean, when the goal aligns and when I've decided that I should be, turn the fucking dial up, right? Like, same thing as you've said you're doing the lift off. So right now you've just gone another level up. Like you said your training hasn't been like this in months. Obviously you're making decisions around your nutrition whilst eating intuitively. Like, you're making decisions around your nutrition that support the goal. I'm the same. I'm like, I'm dieting. I didn't get my 10,000 steps yesterday, so I'm going to get 16,000 today. Don't catch me ever doing that when I'm not working towards a goal. But it's like, dial goes up, we're on. Like, that's what you need to do. And I think that if you approach things from a very phased perspective, knowing what you want when you want it, then makes that shit easy. Like, it makes it so much easier.
And I hope I know for you, it's what's like displayed across your socials. And I hope that's what is displayed across mine, is that like, we are literally just everyday women who like to train, who like to eat and like to socialize. Like, you'll never catch me on my stories being like, I ate green salad all day and 1,500 calories all week, because it's not true. And it's, you know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of people like the fact that you're honest. I think people are starting to turn away from that kind of influencer kind of lifestyle where you're eating low calories, you're always perfect. And people actually resonate with the fact of seeing like, hey, you're out with your friends this weekend. Like, so.
Yeah, I remember, like, even I was talking to Alex about it the other day, where we were like, I remember 2 years ago when we would think, cannot show anything personal, cannot show anyone what life is like behind the scenes. It's like, must be professional, must look perfect. And now it's like, fuck, who cares? Like, people resonate with an authentic version of yourself rather than this like, I'm perfect. Like, no one wants to see that, and no one believes you anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And you just look a lot of my clients come to me more so for the lifestyle factor than more so the content I share, I suppose, which I would love if they came to me for the content regarding nutrition that I share.
I'm smart.
But I think they also come to me because they see, like, I'll post if I'm out on the town. Like, I'll post if I'm eating a cheeseburger, like, because it's a part of life.
Yeah.
So
100%.
I remember having a conversation with you because when we first started, I was like, Nat, why are your socials so boring? Like, and now, like, it's nice. Like, she got engaged. Like, it's on her socials. You had a gyros or a kebab, whatever it's called, afterwards, and you shared it. Like, people want to see, like, this is your job. This is your main source of income. Like, people want to see the fact that you're not a robot. And I think it's so good, like, to have that on there. Like, you understand it because you live like that too. You know what I mean? So
yeah, 1,000%. And I mean, the point that I guess, like, you're not there anymore where you're like, I need to be perfect. I need to show this, like, perfect version of myself, and I need to be adherent 1,000% of the time, and I need to, like, I cannot skip a session. Like, I remember probably 6 months ago, you said to me, I've never skipped a session of our program. And, like, I think not long after that, you were like, I'm tired, I'm not going to go. And I'm like, fuck yes, like, don't go. You're tired. Like, take a day off. And it's just like, that's a huge credit to the progress that you've made as well.
Yeah, I think for the first we're only 3 months in. Oh my gosh, we're only 3 months into this year, and I've
Feels
missed
like
maybe
halfway.
3 weeks of
Yeah.
training because
Yeah.
of just life. And a year ago, no way. Because I remember I've moved this year. I've had COVID. I've been sick. I had a stomach bug, and I obviously had to miss training. But a year ago, I would have powered through. Like I would have done it all.
Yeah, and even just being transparent. Like, I miss training, and guess what? Like, doesn't mean anything about me.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, so my last question that I have, which I'm actually just asking for my own personal benefit here, that came through from just take a guess, was who is the scariest STCfit coach?
Who actually came through with that?
I'm not going to tell you until you answer the question.
Oh.
Take a minute. It's very there's a lot that kind of rides on this answer, so collect yourself.
Okay. Who did it used to be? It used to be Ben. Hey, I was always scared of Ben.
Yeah, me too.
I reckon after Be Bulletproof, Jace, because Jace, I don't know. Ben was, I don't know.
Do you know what?
I reckon Jason, because he comes across as like just a real macho.
It's
like
the
Ben's
big
like
shoulders and the beard. It's 100% the big shoulders and the beard. That's what it's been told anyway.
When Ben was like, I was expecting Ben coming in to be Bulletproof. I was like, oh God, like here we go. I'm about to be like, there's going to be like a sit down environment, like lectured, like straight to the point. Like, and I was like, Ben's a little teddy bear. Jason is the one to watch. All right. Like I've changed. My views have changed.
Do you want to know something so funny? The reason I'm asking you this is like there's a full backstory. So Jace was always like the scary one. Obviously the beard, everyone's just like, scary man. Then we had a coach that was working in the team say the same thing about Ben. That was like, Ben's the scary one. And we're like, oh, the torch has been passed over to Ben. Last week, or like 2 weeks ago, we were on a call with Seb. I'm going to call him out. Seb was with me and Ben on Zoom. And he called me the scary one. And I just like literally cracked up laughing because I was like, oh my God, look at me. Like honestly, between Ben, Jason, and me, I'm the scary one. So now they're like, torch has been passed over.
I actually, you know what though? Like I can, like I don't know. I think because they're big, they scare me. But you know, sometimes in your check-ins, like I'm a bit nervous to what you're going to say. So, and it's so funny. I was actually talking to Holly.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, how do you find Nat's check-ins? And she's like, short and sweet. And I'm like, yeah, you'll know if you're in trouble in those 3 minutes. And she's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, literally, they're 3 minutes straight to the point, no humor, just, all right, you're doing this well, you're not doing this well, let's improve this, all right? All in the same breath. And I'm like, I know. So I can get that. And I'm like, it's just funny. But yeah, I reckon you could give them a run for their money if you just put on some size and maybe like 2 foot.
All right, yeah, we're gonna go in bulk season now. I'm gonna put on some size and get myself massive so I can be the scary one.
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, the glasses. Tam wants to know if the glasses helps Ben or not.
Helps Ben.
Yeah.
Are they the clear ones that I've seen?
Yeah.
I don't know if they were fashion glasses or like real glasses.
So that's a hard no. Or the fact that he told the whole world that he sleeps with a plush toy. I mean, how scary can you really be, you know?
That's the thing. I feel like I was really nervous ever to interact with them ever because I just saw them as these big men who are really educated and I'm like, oh, but they're like the kindest guys.
Yeah, they're funny. Just like you and I, like having banter and talking shit.
Yeah.
You know that now.
And I think it's funny because I don't know. And they're very, I think I've said this before, but they're very inclusive to like women. They're not like these macho men that are just for men and for men's training. I like that the posts and things they talk about, they get on and talk about just like, you know, women things as well. So
yeah, that's STCfit for you, inclusive. Sweet. Well, I think that's a really good place to wrap it up. Yep. Mel, tell us where everyone can find you. Plug your socials. Let everyone know your handle.
All right. Well, there's 2 things I want to plug. First thing is Mel STCfit for 2 weeks free. And the second thing is at mel.getstrong on Instagram.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been so much fun.
Thank you for having me.
I will tag STCfit if you guys liked this episode, if you found it helpful, obviously tag Mel as well. Let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback. I think a lot of people will be able to relate to some of the stuff that we spoke about. I know you have like the most, what's the word? Like not genuine, committed following. So I'm sure that like they'll let you know, they'll let me know. And if you guys want to chat about anything,
I don't even have to ask.
or
I'll
touch,
just tell you.
touch base with either of us, we'd love to hear from you. If you guys are interested, like I mentioned previously, in the middle of the episode, Lifters Circle through the link in the bio. You guys can all get involved. We would absolutely love to have you. We'll leave it there and see you guys next fortnight.